Dr. Hana Kim wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished stitching the last wound on the young Vorthak soldier. The reptilian alien's scales had been badly burned in a mining accident, but he would live. Around her, the medical bay of the UHMS Compassion buzzed with activity. Nurses moved between beds, checking on patients from a dozen different species. "Dr. Kim, we have another emergency coming in," called Nurse Yuki Cho from across the room. She was barely 25, fresh, out of medical school, but her hands were steady and her heart was strong. That mattered more than experience in space medicine. Hana looked at the incoming patient data on her tablet. 3 Kalari soldiers, injured in what their reports called a training accident. The insectoid aliens rarely asked for human medical help. Their empire was proud and strong, but lately more and more of their ships had been limping to neutral space, looking for aid. "Prep surgery room 3, Hana said, "and make sure we have the Kalari blood substitute ready. Their green blood doesn't clot the same way ours does." Captain Day Park's voice came over the ship's speakers. "All medical staff, we have a priority. Rescue mission. Kalari scout ship requesting immediate assistance. They have wounded on board." Hana frowned. The Kalari were known for their military strength. For them to ask for help meant something was very wrong. She made her way to the bridge, her medical coat still stained with alien blood from the day's surgeries. The bridge was a calm place, filled with soft blue lights and quiet beeping sounds. Captain Park stood at the center, his gray hair neat, despite the long shift. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, monitoring the space around their massive hospital ship. "What's the situation, Captain?" Hana asked. Park pointed to the main screen. A small Kalari ship floated in the distance, dark smoke coming from its engines. "They sent a distress call 30 minutes ago. Their ship is badly damaged and they have at least 20 injured crew members. Any idea what happened to them? They won't say. Just that they need medical help immediately." Park looked worried. "The thing is, Doctor, they're asking us to come closer to the Kalari border. That makes me nervous." Hana understood his concern. The Compassion was a hospital ship, clearly marked with the Red Cross symbol that meant medical aid. Under galactic law, no one could attack a medical ship. But the Kalari had been acting strangely lately. Their empire was growing more aggressive, taking over systems that belonged to other species. "We have to help them," Hana said. "That's what we do. We help everyone who needs medical care." Captain Park nodded slowly. "I know. It's just... something feels wrong about this." Lieutenant Commander Hyak Lee looked up from his station. "Sir, I'm picking up some strange energy readings from the Kalari ship. It looks like they're running active scans on us." "Scans?" Park asked. "What kind of scans?" "Defensive systems, weapon signatures, shield strength. The kind of scans you do before a battle, not before a rescue." Hana felt a cold fear in her stomach. "Captain, maybe we should call for a military escort. The nearest patrol ship is 6 hours away," Park replied. "These people will be dead by then if they're as badly hurt as they claim." The debate was interrupted by another call from the Kalari ship. This time, the voice was weak and full of pain. "Human medical ship, please help us. Our crew is dying. We need immediate assistance." Hana made the decision for all of them. "We're going. I won't let people die because we're afraid." Captain Park gave the orders. The Compassion moved closer to the damaged Kalari ship. As they approached, Hana could see the extent of the damage. The small vessel was indeed badly hurt, with hull breaches and system failures visible from the outside. "Prepare for emergency beam out," she told her medical team. "Full trauma kits, and bring the portable surgery unit. Yuki, you're with me." The next 2 hours were a blur of medical activity. The Kalari crew was indeed badly injured. Hana and her team worked without stopping, saving lives and treating wounds. The insectoid aliens were strange to work on, with their hard shells and multiple arms, but injury and pain looked the same on any species. As she worked, Hana noticed something odd. Some of the Kalari crew members were not as badly hurt as they pretended to be. She saw one of them watching her team carefully, taking notes on their equipment and procedures. When she looked directly at him, he quickly acted injured again. "Yuki," she whispered to her assistant. "Something's not right here." Before Yuki could respond, the lights on the Kalari ship flickered, and a new sound filled the air. It was a communication signal, but not one directed at the humans. The Kalari were talking to someone else, and they were trying to hide it. Hana moved closer to where the signal was coming from. Her translator device picked up fragments of the conversation. Words like "position confirmed" and "medical ship." "Defenseless," made her blood run cold. She grabbed her communicator and called the compassion. "Captain Park, we need to leave, now!" "What's wrong, Doctor?" "It's a trap. They're not as injured as they claimed. They've been studying our ship and sending information to someone." Park's voice became urgent. "Emergency beam out. All medical personnel return to ship immediately." As the medical team gathered their equipment, the Kalari crew members suddenly became more active. The injured aliens stood up, revealing that they had been faking their wounds. One of them, a tall insectoid with dark green armor, spoke into a communication device. "Target confirmed. Medical ship has no weapons, minimal shields. Recommend immediate attack." Hana felt sick. They had trusted these aliens, tried to save their lives, and it had all been a lie. As the beam-out process started, she saw the space around them beginning to shimmer. Ships were coming out of hiding, dozens of them, all bearing the marks of the Kalari military. Back on the Compassion, alarms were blaring. Captain Park's voice echoed through the ship. "All hands to emergency. Stations, we are surrounded by hostile vessels." Hana ran to the bridge as soon as she materialized. On the main screen, she could see the truth of their situation. Kalari warships surrounded them completely. Big ships, small ships, all with their weapons pointed at the defenseless hospital. "Vessel, open a channel," Park ordered. The main screen showed a Kalari admiral, his insect-like face cold and emotionless. "Human medical ship, you are now prisoners of the Kalari Empire." "We are a hospital ship," Park said, his voice steady despite the fear Hana could see in his eyes. "We are protected under galactic medical law. We have patients from many species on board, including your own people." The Kalari admiral's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Galactic law is for the weak. You harbor enemies of the Empire. You will surrender or be destroyed." "We don't harbor enemies. We treat the sick and injured, regardless of their species or politics." "That makes you an enemy," the admiral replied. "You have 30 seconds to surrender." Hana looked around the bridge. Every face showed the same mixture of disbelief and horror. They were medical personnel. They saved lives. How could anyone see them as a threat? Captain Park straightened his shoulders. "We will not surrender. We are a medical vessel operating under galactic law. Any attack on us would be a war, crime." The Kalari admiral's response was cold and final. Then you will burn. The screen went dark. Around them, the enemy ships powered up their weapons. In the medical bays below, thousands of patients and medical staff waited, unaware that their protected status meant nothing to an empire that had decided mercy was weakness. Hana grabbed the captain's arm. "We have to evacuate the ship. Get everyone to the escape pods." "There's not enough time," Park replied, his voice heavy with the weight of command. "And not enough pods for everyone." As the first Kalari weapons fired, painting space with deadly energy, Hana realized that everything was about to change. The rules that had protected medical personnel for centuries were about to be broken, and once broken, she feared they might never be repaired. Admiral Jin Sato stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human hospital ship burn. The Compassion was a massive vessel, designed to save lives rather than take them. Its white hull, marked with the Red Cross symbol, was now scarred by weapon fire and explosions. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported, "the medical ship's shields are down. They are not returning fire." Sato's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Of course they are not. They are weak. They build ships to heal instead of to fight. This is why they will never rule the galaxy." Around the burning hospital ship, escape pods launched into space like seeds from a dying flower. Each pod carried injured patients and medical staff hoping to find safety among the stars. But Sato had not forgotten his orders from the High Empress herself. "Target the escape pods," he commanded. His weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, those pods contain medical personnel and patients. Under galactic law. Galactic law is made by the weak to protect the weak," Sato interrupted. "The humans claim to be healers, but they treat our enemies. They give aid to rebels and terrorists. That makes them combatants." The weapons officer's hands shook slightly as he targeted the first escape pod. Inside that small vessel, Medic Tae-Wan held an injured Vorthak child, trying to keep the young alien calm as their pod drifted away from the burning Compassion. "Don't worry," Tae whispered in the child's language. "The patrol ships will find us soon. We're medical personnel. No one attacks medical personnel." Through the small window of the escape pod, Tae could see other pods floating nearby. Some carried human doctors and nurses. Others held alien patients who had been receiving treatment when the attack began. All of them should have been safe. Medical evacuation pods were protected under laws that had existed for over 1,000 years. The first Kalari weapon blast turned an escape pod into expanding gas and debris. Tae's blood went cold. "No," he whispered. "They can't do that. It's against every law of war." But the Kalari ships continued firing. One by one, the escape pods died in flashes of light. Doctors who had spent their lives saving others were killed without mercy. Patients who had trusted in the protection of medical neutrality found that their faith was misplaced. Ty's pod was one of the last. As Kalari fighters moved closer, he activated the emergency beacon and sent a desperate message to any ship that might be listening. "This is Medic Tae-Wan of the UHMS Compassion. The Kalari are attacking medical personnel and patients. They are destroying hospital ships and killing wounded civilians. Someone has to know what happened here. Someone has to tell the galaxy that the rules have changed." The Kalari fighter that approached his pod was small and fast. Through its transparent cockpit, Tae could see the insectoid pilot inside. For a moment, their eyes met across the vacuum of space. The pilot's hand hesitated over his weapons control, then the fighter's weapons powered up. Tae closed his eyes and held the injured child closer. If these were his last moments, he would spend them as he had lived his life, protecting those who could not protect themselves. The weapon blast never came. Commander Hyun Lee's patrol ship Defender dropped out of hyperspace at that moment, its sensors immediately picking up the disaster. The small human warship was outnumbered 50-1, but Lee didn't hesitate. All weapons, target the ships attacking the escape pods, she ordered. Emergency frequency to all vessels. This is a medical rescue operation. Any ship that interferes will be considered hostile. The Defender's missiles streaked through space, destroying 2 Kalari fighters before they could kill more medical personnel. Admiral Sato's fleet turned to face this new threat, but Lee wasn't trying to fight them. She was buying time. "Launch all rescue shuttles," Lee commanded. "Pick up every escape pod you can find and send an emergency message to Earth Command. Tell them the Kalari just committed the worst war crime in galactic history." As the Defender's shuttles raced to collect survivors, Admiral Sato made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Instead of staying to fight one small patrol ship, he ordered his fleet to retreat, but not before launching one final missile at the burning hulk of the Compassion. The hospital ship, which had been home to 3,000 medical personnel and 8,000 patients, exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from several star systems away. Taewon was among only 47 survivors pulled from the wreckage. As he was brought aboard the Defender, still holding the injured alien child, he looked back at the expanding cloud of debris that had once been the greatest medical facility in human space. "How many?" he asked Commander Lee. "How many what?" "How many died?" Lee's face was hard as stone. "Almost 11,000. Medical staff, patients, civilians, all of them protected under galactic law." Tae felt something break inside his chest. 11,000 people. Doctors who had dedicated their lives to healing. Patients who had come seeking help. Children like the one in his arms who had trusted that the Red Cross symbol meant safety. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we tell the galaxy what the Kalari have done," Lee replied, "and then we see if anyone cares enough to do something about it." The news of the Compassion's destruction spread through human space like wildfire. But the reaction from the galactic community was not what humanity had hoped for. Some species condemned the attack in strong words, calling it a violation of everything civilized beings believed in. Others remained silent, afraid that speaking out would make them the next target of Kalari aggression. The Vorthak Republic, whose people had been patients and staff on the Compassion, declared the attack an act of genocide. The crystalline ethereals, who had helped write the original medical protection laws, withdrew their ambassadors from Kalari space. But for every species that condemned the attack, another found reasons to justify it. The Kalari had been expanding their empire for decades, taking over weaker systems and enslaving their populations. Many species were too afraid to oppose them, even when faced with such a clear violation of galactic law. On Earth, the news arrived just as Dr. Bin Kang was finishing his morning coffee. He was reading reports on defensive strategies when his assistant burst into his office. "Sir, there's been an attack. The Compassion has been destroyed." Bin looked up from his papers. The Compassion was the pride of the human medical fleet. "What kind of attack? Pirates? System malfunction?" "No, sir. The Kalari. They surrounded the ship and destroyed it deliberately. They killed medical personnel and patients. They hunted down the escape pods." The coffee cup fell from Bin's hands, shattering on the floor. His daughter Kira was a doctor aboard the Compassion. She had volunteered for the deep space medical mission because she believed in helping others regardless of their species or politics. "Survivors?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. 47, sir. The list of names should be coming through soon. Ben waited for 2 hours that felt like 2 years. When the list finally came, he read through every name twice, hoping he had missed something. But Kira's name was not there. Dr. Kira Kang, age 28, specialist in alien physiology, had died along with almost 11,000 others as the reality of his loss settled over him. Something else began to grow in Ben's mind. It was cold and hard and sharp, like a blade being forged in the fires of grief. The Kelari thought they had shown strength by attacking defenseless medical personnel. They thought they had proven their superiority by killing healers and patients. They were wrong. They had just made the worst mistake in their empire's history. They had killed the daughter of the man who would bring their entire civilization to its knees. But Ben would not do it with weapons or warships. He would do it with something far more dangerous than any bomb or missile. He would do it with the truth about what mercy really meant and what happened to those who tried to destroy it. The Kelari had broken the most sacred law of war. Now Ben Kang would teach them why that law existed in the first place. Dr. Ben Kang sat in his empty house, surrounded by pictures of his daughter. Kira smiled at him from every wall. Her graduation from medical school, her first day working in the alien ward, her last message before the Compassion left for deep space patrol. In that final video, she had been excited about a new surgical technique she wanted to try on Kelari patients. "I think I can reduce their healing time by 30%, Dad," she had said, her eyes bright with the joy of discovery. "The Kelari have such different physiology, but that just means there are new ways to help them." Now she was dead, killed by the very species she had wanted to heal. Ben's hands shook as he poured another cup of coffee. He had not slept in 3 days. Not since the news came. His colleagues from the Strategic Operations Division had called, offering sympathy and time off to grieve. General Su Yun had personally visited to express her condolences. Everyone expected him to take time away from work, to mourn properly before returning to his duties. They didn't understand that work was exactly what he needed. Ben's home office was now covered with star charts, intelligence reports, and cultural analysis files. Every piece of information ever gathered about the Kelari Empire spread across his tables and walls. He had requested access to xenopsychology studies, military assessments, trade records, and diplomatic communications. To his colleagues, it looked like the obsessive behavior of a man unable to accept his loss. They were wrong. This was the methodical preparation of humanity's most dangerous strategic mind. Professor Nam Ju found him there on the 4th day, still wearing the same clothes, surrounded by data about their daughter's killers. "Ben," Nam said softly. Nam had been Kira's teacher in medical school and one of Ben's oldest friends. "You need to rest. You need to eat something. You need to grieve." "I am grieving," Ben replied without looking up from his papers. "I'm just doing it productively." Nam walked around the room, looking at the information Ben had collected. Star maps showing Kelari territory, psychological profiles of their leadership, military structure charts, economic reports about their resource needs. "What are you planning?" Nam asked. "I'm learning about them, really learning, not just their military capabilities or their technology. I'm learning how they think, what they value, what they fear." Ben finally looked up, and Nam was shocked by what he saw in his friend's eyes. There was pain there, yes, but also something cold and calculating. "Did you know that Kelari society is built on the idea that mercy is weakness? Most warrior cultures think that way. No, not like this. The Kalari don't just think mercy is foolish, they think it's disgusting. They believe that any species that shows compassion to enemies is fundamentally inferior and deserves to be conquered. Bin pointed to a cultural analysis report. They attacked the compassion not just for strategic reasons. They attacked it because the very existence of a hospital ship offends their entire world view. Nam sat down in the chair across from his friend. So, what are you going to do with this information? I'm going to show them what mercy really is, Bin said quietly, and why species that practice it have survived for millions of years while warrior empires rise and fall like waves on a beach. The doorbell rang. Nam answered it to find General Su Yun standing on the porch, her uniform crisp despite the late hour. She had come to check on one of her most valuable strategists, expecting to find a broken man who needed time to heal. Instead, she found a man who had transformed his grief into something far more dangerous. Bin, she said as she entered the office. I came to see how you're doing. Take all the time you need before coming back to work. Actually, General, I have a proposal for you. Bin gestured to the information covering his walls. I want to establish a new division within strategic operations, psychological warfare, and cultural analysis. Su Yun looked around the room, taking in the scope of Bin's research. She had known him for 15 years, had watched him solve strategic problems that other minds couldn't even understand. But this was different. This was personal. What exactly are you proposing? She asked. The Kalari think they understand humanity. They think we're weak because we build hospital ships instead of more warships. They think our compassion makes us easy targets. Bin's voice was steady, but Nam could hear the pain underneath. I want to show them how wrong they are. Through psychological warfare, through education, the Kalari attacked the compassion because they don't understand what mercy actually is. They think it's weakness, but it's not. Mercy is strength under control. Compassion is power, choosing not to destroy. Bin stood up and walked to a map of Kalari space. I want to teach them that lesson. General Yun was quiet for a long moment, studying the man before her. Bin Kang was one of the most brilliant strategic minds in human space. His plans had saved countless lives and prevented 3 major wars. But this felt different. This felt personal. How? She asked. By being ourselves. By showing them what real strength looks like. By proving that a species that values life will always defeat one that only values death. Bin turned back to face her. I want to fight them with our greatest weapon, our humanity. Bin, I know you're hurting. We all are. What the Kalari did was monstrous, but we can't let personal grief drive military strategy. This isn't about grief, General. This is about survival. Not just human survival. The survival of every species that believes in something more than might makes right. Bin picked up a report about Kalari expansion patterns. They're not going to stop with one hospital ship. They're going to keep pushing, keep testing, until they've convinced the galaxy that mercy really is weakness, unless someone proves them wrong. Nam watched his friend pace around the room, energy radiating from him despite his obvious exhaustion. This was Bin at his most dangerous, when he had a problem to solve and the intellectual tools to solve it. What's your timeline? General Yun asked. 6 months for initial planning and team building. Another 6 months for implementation of Phase 1? Full operation could be running within a year. And the goal? Bin was quiet for a moment, looking at a picture of Kira in her medical uniform. When he spoke, his voice was soft but filled with absolute certainty. The complete transformation of Kalari society. I'm going to teach them to value the things they tried to destroy. I'm going to make them understand that the strongest species are the ones that protect the weak, not the ones that prey on them. General. Yoon stared at him. You're talking about changing an entire civilization. Yes. That's impossible. No, it's not. It's just never been tried before. Bin smiled for the first time since the news of Kira's death. The Kalari think humans are weak because we show mercy. I'm going to show them that mercy is what makes us strong enough to defeat an empire without firing a shot. Nam leaned forward in his chair. How do you plan to do that? By giving them something they've never experienced before. Genuine human compassion. Even when they don't deserve it. Especially when they don't deserve it. Bin's eyes hardened. They killed my daughter because she believed in healing. Now I'm going to use that same belief to bring down their entire empire. Through kindness? General Yoon asked, skepticism clear in her voice. Through strategic kindness, calculated compassion, mercy deployed as a weapon more powerful than any bomb. Bin looked at both of them, and they could see the brilliant strategist emerging from the grieving father. The Kalari understand strength and weakness. They don't understand the thing that's stronger than both. Love deployed with intelligence. General Yoon was quiet for a long time, considering the proposal. Finally, she nodded. Write up a formal plan. If it's viable, I'll present it to the Defense Council. After she left, Nam remained with his friend, watching him work late into the night. As the hours passed, he began to understand what Bin was really planning. It wasn't revenge, though it would certainly feel like it to the Kalari. It was something far more sophisticated and far more dangerous. Bin Kang was going to save the galaxy by teaching its most ruthless empire how to be human, and if his plan worked, the Kalari would thank him for it. Agent Mi Lim adjusted the biomask covering her face and checked her appearance in the mirror one last time. The advanced technology had changed her human features to match those of a Kalari worker caste female. Her skin now had the pale green tint and hard texture of insectoid flesh. Her eyes were larger and multifaceted. Most importantly, her scent had been altered to match Kalari biochemistry. Remember, Dr. Bin Kang's voice came through her hidden communicator. You're not just gathering intelligence. You're studying their culture from the inside. I need to understand how they think, how they make decisions, how their society really works. Mi touched the communication device hidden behind her modified ear. Understood, sir. How long do you expect this mission to last? As long as it takes. This isn't a quick intelligence grab, Agent Lim. This is deep cultural analysis. You might be there for months. Mi nodded and picked up her forged identification papers. According to her new identity, she was Kree Lim, a worker caste Kalari who had lost her family in a mining accident and was seeking employment in the capital system. It was a perfect cover. Worker caste Kalari were barely noticed by their superiors, and the recent expansion had created a demand for cheap labor. 3 weeks later, Mi found herself cleaning floors in a Kalari military command center, invisible to the officers walking past her. The biomask was holding perfectly, and her study of Kalari language and customs had paid off. To everyone around her, she was just another worker doing her job, but Mi was listening to every conversation, recording every meeting, and learning things about Kalari society that no human had ever known. The medical ship destruction was a complete success, Admiral Jin Sato was saying to his staff. 17 other species have already withdrawn their medical vessels from border regions. The humans are learning that their weakness has consequences. One of his subordinates, a younger officer with darker markings, seemed less certain. Some of the crew are asking questions about the escape pods, sir. Killing medical personnel is unusual. Unusual? Sato's mandibles clicked in anger. It was necessary. The humans used their medical ships to spy on us, to spread their disgusting philosophy of mercy and weakness. Better to destroy them all now than let them infect our empire with their sickness. Mi continued mopping the floor, but every word was being recorded by devices hidden in her cleaning supplies. Later that night, in her tiny worker quarters, she would transmit the recordings back to Dr. Kang's team. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Captain Wu Han was preparing for his first mission under Dr. Kang's new strategy. The target was a Kalari supply depot on the edge of their territory. But this wouldn't be a normal military strike. Remember, Dr. Kang had told him during the briefing, the goal isn't to cause maximum damage. The goal is to send a specific message. We hit fast, we hit precisely, and then we leave something behind. Captain Han's team approached the depot in stealth ships, avoiding Kalari patrols with ease. The depot was lightly defended. The Kalari never expected attacks this deep in their territory. Within 30 minutes, Han's forces had disabled the depot's defenses and weapons, but instead of destroying the facility, they did something the Kalari had never experienced before. Medical team, deploy, Han ordered. Human medics emerged from the attack ships and began treating wounded Kalari soldiers. The insectoid aliens were confused and terrified. They had been trained to expect death from human attackers, not medical aid. Why are you helping us? One injured Kalari guard asked Dr. Ray Kim, Hana's sister who had volunteered for the mission. Because you're hurt, Ray replied simply, bandaging the alien's wounded arm. We help anyone who's hurt. But we are enemies. That doesn't matter. We're doctors first, soldiers second. While the medical team worked, Han's soldiers left behind supplies of food, medicine, and equipment. They also left recordings, videos of the Kalari attack on the Compassion, showing the destruction of medical personnel and patients. This is what your empire did, the recording explained in the Kalari language. They attacked healers and killed the wounded. We could do the same to you now. Instead, we choose to heal your wounded and feed your hungry. This is the difference between strength and brutality. The human forces withdrew as quickly as they had arrived, leaving behind a depot full of confused Kalari soldiers who had just experienced something their culture had no framework to understand. Similar strikes happened across Kalari space over the following months. Each attack followed the same pattern. Swift military action followed by medical aid and humanitarian supplies. The Kalari military found themselves dealing with something they had never encountered, an enemy that seemed more interested in healing than killing. Agent Mi Lim watched the effects of these operations from her position inside Kalari Command. The initial reaction was anger and confusion. They mock us, Admiral Sato raged during one meeting. They attack our facilities and then leave medical supplies like we are charity cases. Perhaps they are trying to show mercy, suggested the younger officer. Maybe this is how humans demonstrate strength. Mercy is weakness. Sato slammed his fist on the table. Any species that helps its enemies deserves to be conquered. Double the patrols. I want these human raiders found and destroyed, but me. Noticed something else in the recordings she sent back to Dr. Kang. Not all Kalari officers were as certain as Admiral Sato. Some were beginning to ask questions about the attacks on medical personnel. Others wondered why humans would waste valuable supplies on enemy soldiers. The real breakthrough came when Dr. Kang introduced what he called the Mercy Protocol. Every human military operation now included specific instructions: protect Kelari civilians, provide medical aid to enemy wounded, and always leave behind more supplies than were used in the attack. Human soldiers carried medical kits for both their own forces and their enemies. Human ships broadcasted humanitarian messages in all galactic languages. The psychological effect was devastating. Kelari soldiers began to hesitate before firing on human ships, wondering if those same humans might save their lives later. Kelari civilians started questioning why their government had attacked medical personnel when humans seemed so committed to protecting life. Most importantly, the warrior caste that ruled Kelari society found themselves facing a challenge they couldn't understand, an enemy that made them feel guilty for fighting. "The humans are contaminating our soldiers with their weakness," Admiral Sato complained to the High Command. "Some of our officers are actually arguing for medical protections in battle. They say it would be honorable to spare enemy medics, I-2." Empress Zixara listened to these reports with growing concern. The Kelari Empire had been built on the principle that might made right, that mercy was a luxury only the strong could afford to show to the weak. But the humans were showing mercy to the strong, and it was creating chaos in Kelari society. "How do we fight an enemy that heals our wounded?" she asked her advisors. No one had an answer. Back on Earth, Dr. Kang studied the reports from Agent Milim and smiled for the first time since Kira's death. The plan was working exactly as he had hoped. The Kelari were discovering that their entire worldview was based on a false premise. They had believed that mercy was weakness because they had never encountered strategic mercy. Compassion deployed as a weapon against hatred, kindness used to defeat cruelty. "Phase 2 is ready to begin," he told General Yoon during their weekly briefing. "What's Phase 2? We're going to force them to choose between their principles and their survival. And when they make that choice, they're going to discover something about themselves that will change their empire forever. Which is," Dr. Kang looked at the picture of his daughter on his desk, "they're going to discover that deep down, even Kelari want to be worthy of mercy. They just never knew it was possible." Sub-Commander Velkar stood guard outside the prisoner compound, his compound eyes scanning the perimeter for any sign of trouble. Inside the fence, human prisoners worked under the hot sun of Kelari Prime, building new barracks for the expanding military. Most of them were soldiers captured during border skirmishes, but some were civilians caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then there were the medics. Velkar didn't understand why High Command kept the medical personnel alive. According to Kelari military doctrine, enemy medics were combatants who helped soldiers return to battle. They should have been executed immediately after capture. Instead, they had been put to work in the prison medical facility, treating sick and wounded Kelari guards. It made no sense to Velkar. Why would the Empire use enemy medics to heal their own people? "Sub-Commander," one of his guards approached. "The human medic wants to see you." Velkar clicked his mandibles in annoyance. "Which one?" "The female. Hyo Shin. She says there's a problem with the medical supplies. Hyo Shin had been a nurse aboard the Compassion when it was destroyed. She was one of only 3 medical personnel who had survived the attack and subsequent capture. For 6 months, she had been working in the prison medical facility, treating Kelari guards who were injured or became ill. Velkar found her in the medical bay, checking inventory on a tablet. She was a small woman, barely reaching his chest, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Like all the human prisoners, she wore the gray uniform that marked her as property of the Kalari Empire. "What is the problem?" he asked in accented standard. "We're running low on pain medication," Hio replied without looking up. "Specifically the kind that works on Kalari physiology. If we don't get more supplies soon, I won't be able to treat your guards properly." Velkar studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Human prisoners had tried to escape before by claiming they needed supplies or equipment. But Hyoshin had never caused trouble. If anything, she worked harder than she needed to, often staying late to check on patients. "Why do you care?" he asked. "We are your enemies. We destroyed your ship and killed your people." Hio finally looked up at him, and Velkar was surprised by what he saw in her eyes. Not hatred or fear, but something he couldn't identify, something that made him uncomfortable. "Because they're in pain," she said simply. "I'm a nurse. I help people who are in pain." "Even enemies?" "Especially enemies. Anyone can help their friends. It takes strength to help people who have hurt you." Velkar left the medical bay feeling unsettled. He had been trained since birth to believe that strength came from defeating enemies, not helping them. The idea that showing mercy required more strength than showing cruelty was foreign to everything he understood about the universe. That night, he received an encrypted message from Agent Mai Lim, though he had no idea it came from a human spy. The message contained intelligence about human military movements near the prison complex. "Human forces detected moving toward this facility," the report stated. "Probable rescue mission for captured personnel. Recommend increased security measures." Velkar immediately doubled the guard and prepared defensive positions. If the humans wanted their people back, they would have to fight for them. 3 days later, the attack came. Captain Wu Han's strike team approached the prison under cover of darkness, using advanced stealth technology to avoid Kalari sensors. Their mission was to rescue the medical personnel, but like all operations under Dr. Kang's strategy, it had a secondary purpose. The assault was swift and precise. Human soldiers disabled the prison's defenses and communications, while specialized teams moved to secure the prisoners. But something went wrong during the extraction. Velkar was leading a patrol when the alarm sounded. As he rushed toward the prisoner compound, an explosion knocked him to the ground. Shrapnel from a damaged guard tower tore through his carapace, leaving him bleeding and unable to move. He lay there in the darkness, watching human soldiers move through the compound with practiced efficiency. They were here to rescue their people, and he was just another enemy to step over. Then someone knelt beside him. "Don't move," Hyoshin said, her hands already examining his wounds. "You've got internal bleeding. I need to stop it, or you'll die in about 10 minutes. Velkar tried to push her away. "Go! Your people are here! Escape!" "Not until I've stopped the bleeding." She was already opening a medical kit, working by the light of burning buildings. "Hold still. This is going to hurt." "Why?" Velkar gasped. "I am your enemy. I kept you prisoner." "Because you're hurt," Hio replied, the same answer she had given him before. "And because someone has to prove that humans are better than the stories your empire tells about us." Captain Han found them, there 15 minutes later. A human nurse working frantically to save the life of a Kalari officer while her rescue team waited. "Hio, we need to go, now," Han said urgently. "Almost finished," she replied, sealing the last of Velkar's wounds with medical gel. "He'll live, but he needs to get to a hospital soon." As the rescue team prepared to leave, Velkar grabbed Hio's arm with one of his functioning hands. "Why?" he asked again. "Because this is what mercy looks like," she said, Remember this moment, Sub-Commander. Remember that humans could have left you to die, but chose to save you instead. Maybe someday you'll understand what that means." The rescue team disappeared into the night, leaving Velkar alive but fundamentally changed. When reinforcements found him an hour later, he was still staring at the medical supplies Hio had left behind, supplies that had saved his life. The story of what happened at the prison spread through the Kalari military like wildfire. A human medic had risked her own escape to save the life of her captor. It was the kind of story that should have been dismissed as propaganda, but too many Kalari soldiers had witnessed it themselves. Sub-Commander Velkar found himself questioned by military intelligence about the incident. The human medic could have escaped, the interrogator pointed out. Instead, she chose to save your life. Why would she do such a thing? She said it was mercy, Velkar replied. Mercy is weakness. Then why am I alive? The interrogator had no answer for that. High Empress Zixara received reports of similar incidents happening across the Empire. Human soldiers risking their lives to save Kalari civilians during evacuations. Human medics treating wounded Kalari even during active combat. Human rescue teams that included medical supplies for their enemies. This cannot continue, she told her advisors. The humans are spreading psychological contamination among our forces. Some of our officers are beginning to question the attack on their medical ship. What do you suggest, Empress? Asked her military commander. We need to remind our people why mercy is weakness. Prepare for a demonstration. Find a human civilian target, a colony or station with no military value. Destroy it completely, just as we did with their hospital ship. Show our forces that humans die just as easily as anyone else. But even as she gave the order, Zixara felt a strange unease. The humans had responded to the destruction of their hospital ship not with revenge, but with greater mercy. They seemed to become more compassionate the more brutally they were treated. It was unnatural. It was disturbing. It was terrifying. Meanwhile, Agent Mi Lim continued to observe and report from within Kalari society. She had noticed changes in the attitudes of ordinary Kalari citizens. Workers were asking questions about the war that they had never asked before. Some were wondering why humans would risk their lives to save Kalari soldiers if humans were really as evil as the government claimed. The foundation is cracking, she reported to Dr. Kang. The Kalari social order depends on everyone believing that mercy equals weakness, but they're seeing evidence that contradicts this every day. Dr. Kang smiled as he read her report. The plan was working even better than he had hoped. The Kalari Empire was learning something that would ultimately destroy it from within. That mercy wasn't the opposite of strength, but its highest expression. And once they understood that lesson, they would never be able to go back to the simple brutality that had built their empire. Sub-Commander Velkar sat in his quarters that night, staring at the medical supplies that had saved his life. For the first time in his military career, he found himself questioning everything he had been taught about strength and weakness, about enemies and mercy. If mercy was weakness, why was he alive? If humans were inferior, why had one of them chosen to save him instead of escaping to safety? And if the Kalari way was right, why did it suddenly feel so wrong? Captain Min Park stood before the Galactic Council, her dress uniform crisp and her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to propose. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great chamber, their attention focused on the human diplomat who had requested this emergency session. Honored delegates, Min began. For too long, the galaxy has watched as the Kalari Empire expands through violence and intimidation. They have broken the most sacred laws of war by attacking medical personnel and killing the wounded. Today, I offer them a chance to prove their claims of superiority through honorable combat. The Kalari delegation, led by Ambassador Zorthek, clicked their mandibles in what might have been laughter. The humans wish to challenge the Empire? How amusing! Not the Empire, Min replied calmly. I challenge you to single combat between champions. One warrior from each species, fighting to determine which civilization is truly superior. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Single combat between species champions was an ancient tradition, rarely used in modern times. But it was still recognized under galactic law as a legitimate way to settle disputes. Ambassador Zorthek leaned forward. And what would be the terms of this combat? Min smiled, and every human diplomat in the chamber knew they were about to witness the most elegant trap in the history of galactic politics. Simple terms, she said. Single combat in a neutral arena. The winner's species is declared superior and receives preferred trading status with all council members. The loser's species accepts a subordinate position in galactic politics. Acceptable, Zorthek replied immediately. The Kalari had never lost single combat. Their warriors were bred for battle, trained from birth to kill efficiently. No human could stand against a Kalari champion. There is one additional condition, Min continued. Since this combat is to determine which species is superior, it must demonstrate the highest values of each civilization. The Kalari value strength and dominance. Humans value courage and compassion. Therefore, medical personnel from both species will be present to treat the combatants' wounds during the fight. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. The Kalari could not refuse medical assistance without appearing weak. But accepting it meant acknowledging that human medics were legitimate non-combatants who should be protected, not killed. Zorthek hesitated for just a moment, understanding the dilemma. Then Kalari pride made the decision for him. Agreed. We will show the galaxy that Kalari strength needs no assistance, while human weakness requires constant care. The combat was scheduled for 1 week later, giving both sides time to select their champions. The Kalari chose Admiral Dokren, a legendary warrior who had never been defeated in personal combat. The humans chose Captain Jake Morrison, a veteran soldier known more for his tactical thinking than his fighting skills. Dr. Bin Kang watched the preparations from his command center, satisfied that the trap was set. The real champion of humanity wouldn't be Morrison. It would be Dr. Ray Kim, Hana's sister, who had volunteered to serve as the human medical officer during the combat. Are you sure about this plan? General Su-Yun asked. If Morrison loses, humanity's position in the galaxy becomes very difficult. Morrison won't lose, Bin replied, because winning and losing aren't measured the same way anymore. The arena was built on a neutral space station, with representatives from every major species in attendance. Admiral Dokren entered to thunderous applause from the Kalari delegation. He was massive even by Kalari standards, his carapace scarred by countless battles, his multiple arms armed with traditional Kalari weapons. Captain Morrison looked tiny by comparison, human, unmodified, carrying simple weapons and wearing basic armor. The betting odds heavily favored the Kalari champion, but Dr. Ray Kim drew just as much attention as the combatants. She entered the arena wearing the white coat and red cross, symbol of the medical profession, carrying supplies to treat both fighters. Beside her walked the Kalari medical officer, a small worker caste individual who seemed nervous about the entire arrangement. "Let the combat begin," announced the neutral arbiter. Admiral Dockeran attacked immediately, his superior size and strength driving Morrison backward across the arena. The human fought defensively, using speed and tactics to avoid the crushing, blows that would end the fight instantly. The first blood was drawn when Dockeran's blade sliced across Morrison's arm. The human staggered, and the Kalari pressed his advantage. "Medical assistance for the human champion," the arbiter announced. Dr. Ray Kim ran onto the field under the protection of medical neutrality laws. She quickly treated Morrison's wound, stopping the bleeding and giving him a stimulant to help with the pain. But as she worked, she spoke to Admiral Dockeran. "You're favoring your left side," she observed. "Did you injure your lower arm in training?" Dockeran was surprised by the question. "It is nothing. Let me look at it. I can treat both combatants under the rules." For a moment, the massive Kalari warrior hesitated. Then, driven by curiosity more than need, he allowed the human doctor to examine his arm. "Muscle strain," Ray diagnosed. "This will help." She applied a pain-relieving gel to the injury. "There. That should improve your mobility." The arena fell silent. A human doctor had just treated the wounds of the enemy champion in the middle of combat. The fight resumed, but something had changed. Admiral Dockeran found himself fighting more cautiously, not wanting to seriously injure the human who had just helped him. Morrison pressed his attack, drawing more blood from the Kalari champion. Again, medical assistance was called. This time, both medics treated both fighters. Dr. Ray Kim worked on Dockeran's wounds while the Kalari medic helped Morrison. "Why do you help me?" Dockeran asked as Ray stitched a cut on his carapace. "Because you're hurt," she replied. It was the same answer Hyo Shin had given Subcommander Velkar, and it had the same effect. The combat continued for 2 hours, but it was no longer really about fighting. Every time the medics entered the arena, the true nature of the contest became clearer. This wasn't a battle between warriors. It was a demonstration of values. Admiral Dockeran was stronger, faster, and more skilled with weapons. But Captain Morrison was being healed by someone who cared more about saving life than winning fights, and that doctor was willing to heal both sides equally. The turning point came when Morrison stumbled and fell, his leg badly injured. As Dr. Ray Kim rushed to help him, Admiral Dockeran could have struck the killing blow that would end the combat. Instead, he stepped back and waited for the medical treatment to finish. "Why?" Morrison asked when he was back on his feet. "Because she healed." "Me too," Dockeran replied. "How can I kill someone who saved my life?" The words echoed through the arena and across the galaxy. A Kalari warrior, bred for battle and trained to show no mercy, had refused to kill an enemy because that enemy's medic had shown him kindness. "I cannot continue this combat, Admiral," Dockeran announced to the crowd. "The human doctor has treated my wounds with the same care she showed her own champion. To fight against such mercy would be dishonorable." The arena erupted in chaos. Technically, by refusing to continue, Admiral Dockeran had forfeited the combat. But his words had been broadcast across Kalari space, and their impact was immediate. High Empress Zixara watched from her palace, her advisors arguing frantically about damage control. But the damage was already done. The greatest warrior in the Kalari military had publicly stated that showing mercy was more honorable than showing strength. Within hours, Kalari military units across the empire began reporting discipline problems. Officers were questioning orders to attack medical facilities. Soldiers were asking why humans would heal their enemies if humans were truly inferior. Sub-Commander Velkar, still recovering from the wounds that Hyo Shin had healed, watched Admiral Dokkaran's speech and felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of the universe. Medical assistants should be protected, he told his superior officer. If we attack healers, we are no better than animals. That is treasonous thinking, his commander replied. Then maybe our definition of treason is wrong. The comment was reported to military intelligence, but Velkar was not alone. Across the Empire, Kalari soldiers were beginning to question the very foundations of their society. Dr. Bin Kang watched the news reports with quiet satisfaction. The trap had worked perfectly, by forcing the Kalari to accept medical assistance. During combat, he had made them acknowledge the value of mercy, and once they acknowledged it, they could never go back to seeing it as weakness. Phase 3 is ready, he told General Yoon. What's Phase 3? We wait, Bin replied. The Kalari Empire is about to tear itself apart, trying to decide whether mercy is strength or weakness. And when the dust settles, we'll be there to help them rebuild their society around the values they tried to destroy. On a dozen Kalari worlds, citizens watched the recordings of their greatest warrior being healed by his enemy and refusing to continue fighting as a result. Some called it treason, others called it honor. But everyone agreed on one thing. The old ways were ending, and something new was beginning, something that looked suspiciously like the human definition of civilization. The Kalari Empire was at war with itself. General Zorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching orbital bombardment turn the capital city of Vorthak Prime into a sea of fire. The planet had declared independence from the Empire 3 days ago, inspired by what they called the human example of showing mercy to enemies. Mercy is a disease, Zorthak told his officers as civilian buildings exploded below them. The humans have infected our people with weakness, and the only cure is to burn it out completely. Zorthak led the traditional faction of the Kalari, military. Those who believed that Admiral Dokkaran's refusal to kill his human opponent had been an act of cowardice that shamed the entire empire. They called themselves the Pure Kalari, and they were determined to restore the old ways through any means necessary. But they were not unopposed. Commander Velkar's ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak system, leading a fleet of vessels that bore new insignia. The traditional Kalari military symbol combined with the Galactic Medical Cross. His forces called themselves the Reformed Kalari, and they had come to stop the bombardment. General Zorthak, Velkar's voice came across the communication channel. Cease your attack on the civilian population immediately. Commander Velkar, Zorthak replied. You are in violation of direct orders from High Command. Withdraw your forces or be destroyed. I no longer recognize the authority of leaders who order the murder of innocents, Velkar said. The humans taught us that true strength protects the weak. I will not abandon that lesson. The two fleets faced each other above the burning planet. Kalari ships preparing to fire on other Kalari ships for the first time in their species' history. But this was not a normal civil war. Both sides had been influenced by Dr. Bin Kang's careful strategy. Before we fight, Velkar announced, I am deploying medical vessels to evacuate civilians from the planet below. Any ship that fires on medical personnel will be marked as an enemy of civilization itself. Zorthak wanted to order the immediate destruction of the medical ships, but he hesitated. Even among his hardline followers, the idea of attacking marked medical vessels had become controversial. Too many Kalari soldiers had been saved by human medics for such an order to be followed without question. "Deploy your medical ships," he said finally. "But the planetary government must surrender, or this system burns." As Kalari medical vessels descended toward the planet, Agent Mi Lim watched from her position aboard Zorthak's flagship. Her biomask had held perfectly for over a year, allowing her to observe the Empire's transformation from within. Now she was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. A Kalari military force that prioritized saving lives over taking them. The evacuation proceeded under the protection of medical neutrality laws that both sides still respected. But as civilian shuttles fled the planet, carrying refugees from a dozen different species, something unexpected happened. Human ships arrived. Dr. Bin Kang had timed the intervention perfectly. As Kalari forces faced each other in battle, human medical vessels appeared throughout the system, offering aid to all sides without prejudice. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the UHS Mercy," came a transmission in perfect Kalari. "We are here to provide medical assistance to any wounded, regardless of their faction or species. We ask for safe passage under galactic medical law." General Zorthak stared at the human medical ships in disbelief. These were the same vessels his empire had spent months trying to destroy. Now they had come voluntarily into a war zone to help Kalari civilians caught in the crossfire. "The humans mock us," one of his officers said. "They come to help the very people we are fighting. Or they come to show us what real strength looks like," another officer replied quietly. That second comment came from Major Siktar, a veteran of the original attack on the Compassion. She had been having doubts about that mission ever since watching Admiral Docrin's combat, and seeing human medics willingly enter a war zone to help their enemies had crystallized those doubts into certainty. "Major Siktar," Zorthak said sharply, "remember your loyalty to the Empire." "I am loyal to the Empire, sir. But perhaps the Empire needs to change to be worthy of that loyalty." Before Zorthak could respond, reports began flooding in from across Kalari space. The civil war was spreading to every inhabited system. Some worlds sided with the hardliners, others with the reformers. But on every world, human medical ships appeared to treat the wounded and evacuate civilians. High Empress Zixara found herself ruling an empire that no longer existed as a unified entity. Her throne room was filled with conflicting reports from military commanders who could no longer agree on what the empire stood for. "The humans have destroyed us without firing a shot," she told her advisors. "They have turned our own people against each other by showing them what mercy looks like. Perhaps," suggested one of her counselors carefully, "the humans have shown us what we could become." Zixara turned to stare at the advisor who had spoken. "You think we should surrender to human values?" "I think we should examine why those values are so attractive to our people that they are willing to fight a civil war to adopt them." The Empress was quiet for a long moment, considering the reports spread across her desk. Kalari worlds declaring independence from the Empire. Military units switching sides. Civilian populations demanding protection for medical personnel and non-combatants. "What do the humans want from us?" she asked finally. "According to their diplomatic communications, they want nothing," her military commander replied. "They offer medical aid, humanitarian supplies, and refugee assistance. But they ask for no territory, no tribute, no political concessions." "That makes no sense. Why help us if they gain nothing?" Agent Mi Lim, still disguised as a worker, had managed to position herself as a servant in the throne room. She listened to this conversation with intense interest, knowing that every word would be transmitted back to Dr. Bin Kang. The answer to the Empress's question came from an unexpected source. A communication request from Commander Velkar. Now, leader of the reformed Kalari faction. Your Majesty, Velkar said when the channel opened, I request permission to land on the homeworld under flag of truce. There are things you need to understand about what is happening to our empire. You are a traitor and a rebel, Zixara replied. Why would I grant you safe passage? Because I have information about the humans that will change everything you think you know about this war. 3 hours later, Velkar stood in the same throne room where he had once received commendations for military service. But now he wore the insignia of the reformed Kalari, and his words carried the weight of revelation. The humans are not trying to conquer us, he told the Empress. They are trying to save us. Explain. Every human action in this conflict has been designed to make us confront our own values. They could have responded to the Compassion's destruction with massive retaliation. Instead, they chose to show us what real strength looks like. Velkar activated a holographic display showing human medical ships throughout Kalari space. Look at this. Human vessels in every system where there is fighting, treating wounded from both sides. They gain nothing from this except the opportunity to demonstrate that their way of life is superior to ours. And you believe their way is superior? I believe that a civilization that builds hospital ships will outlast one that destroys them, Velkar replied. The humans have shown us that mercy is not weakness. It is the strength to choose life over death, healing over destruction. From her position near the throne, Agent Mi Lim watched the Empress's reaction carefully. Zixara was struggling with concepts that challenged everything she had been taught about power and dominance. What do you propose? The Empress asked finally. An end to the civil war, a new government that protects medical personnel and civilians, an alliance with the humans based on mutual respect rather than conquest. Velkar paused, knowing his next words would be seen as treason by half his species. I propose that we become worthy of the mercy the humans have shown us. Across the galaxy, the fighting continued, but something had changed in the nature of the conflict. Both sides now respected medical neutrality. Both sides evacuated civilians before battles. Both sides had been influenced by the human example of strategic compassion. Dr. Bin Kang watched the reports from his command center, satisfied that his plan was reaching its final stage. The Kalari Empire was burning, but from its ashes would rise something better, a civilization that had learned to value the very things it had once tried to destroy. The hardliners are losing support, General Su Yun reported. Every day more Kalari military units switch to Velkar's faction. Because they've seen what we really are, Bin replied. They've seen humans risk their lives to save Kalari, civilians. They've seen our medics treat their wounded. They've learned that real strength isn't about who can destroy the most, but about who can save the most. The Kalari Empire was ending, but in its place, something unprecedented was beginning. The first interstellar civilization founded on the principle that mercy was the highest form of strength, and at the center of it all was the memory of a hospital ship that had died so that an empire could learn how to live. 5 years after the destruction of the UHMS Compassion, Dr. Bin Kang stood in the observation deck of the Kira Kang Memorial Medical Station, watching ships from across the galaxy dock at the massive facility. The station was 10 times larger than the original Compassion, with medical bays designed to treat every known species and research laboratories working on diseases that affected multiple civilizations. But the most remarkable thing about the station was not its size or technology. It was the fact that it was jointly operated by humans and the former Kalari territories. "Dr. Kang," a familiar voice said behind him. He turned to see Medic Tae-won approaching, no longer wearing a prisoner's gray uniform, but the white coat of the station's chief of interspecies medical training. "Tae?" Bin smiled, still amazed by how much the young man had changed. The frightened medic who had survived the Compassion's destruction had become one of the galaxy's leading experts on cross-species emergency medicine. "How are the new trainees doing?" "Better than I expected," Tae replied, joining Bin at the observation window. "The former Kalari medical students are particularly eager to learn. They seem to understand the value of what we're teaching them." Through the transparent aluminum, they could see medical teams working together in the emergency bay. Humans, former Kalari, Vorthak, and half a dozen other species moved with practiced coordination, treating patients without regard for their origin or politics. "Commander Velkar is here," Tai mentioned. "He wanted to speak with you about the new protocols." Bin nodded. Velkar had become the leader of the reformed Kalari Council, the democratic government that had replaced the old empire in most of the former Kalari territories. His transformation from prison guard to advocate for medical neutrality was one of the most remarkable changes Bin had witnessed. He found Velkar in Conference Room 7, studying holographic displays of medical response plans. The former sub-commander had changed dramatically over the years. His military bearing remained, but his hard chiton now bore the blue medical cross that marked him as a qualified emergency responder. "Dr. Kang," Velkar stood and offered the human greeting of a handshake rather than the traditional Kalari clicking of mandibles. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Of course. What can I do for you?" "The Council has voted to expand the Compassion." "Accords," Velkar said, referring to the Galactic Treaty that guaranteed absolute protection for medical personnel and facilities. "We want to establish rapid response medical fleets that can reach any system within 72 hours of a crisis." Bin studied the plans, impressed by their scope and ambition. This would require significant resources. Ships, personnel, supplies, positioned throughout the galaxy. "The Council is prepared to fund half the cost. We hope the human government and other signatories will contribute the rest." It was an extraordinary offer. The reformed Kalari Council was essentially proposing to spend a significant portion of their budget on medical aid for other species, including their former enemies. "Why?" Bin asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Because 5 years ago humans showed us what real strength looks like," Velkar replied. "When we destroyed your hospital ship, you could have responded with revenge. Instead, you responded with more hospitals. You taught us that the strongest civilizations are the ones that protect life, not the ones that take it." Through the conference room's window, they could see Dr. Ray Kim leading a surgical team in one of the main operating theaters. She was working on a Kalari patient, her movements precise and caring as she repaired damage from an industrial accident. "Dr. Kim saved my life once," Velkar continued. "During the arena combat between Admiral Dochren and Captain Morrison. She treated both fighters equally, showing no favoritism despite the fact that we were enemies. That moment changed everything, for me." Bin remembered that day well. The trap he had set for the Kalari had worked perfectly, forcing them to confront the contradiction between their beliefs and their actions. but seeing it work was different from living with its consequences. Shakir, you ever regret it? Ben asked. The end of the Empire, the Civil War, the changes to your society? Velkar was quiet for a moment, considering the question. I regret the violence of the transition. I regret that it took a war to teach us what we should have learned through peace. But I do not regret becoming a people worthy of the mercy you showed us. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Ben activated the communication system to see General Su-Yun's face on the holographic display. Ben, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. The Vorlak Confederation has declared war on the Gentarum Republic. Both sides are requesting medical support. Deployment time? Ben asked. 6 hours for the first medical ships, 18 hours for full deployment. Approved. And General, make sure both sides understand that medical personnel are protected under the Compassion Accords. Any attack on our people will result in immediate withdrawal of medical support. After the call ended, Velkar looked at Ben with something approaching admiration. You've created something unprecedented, you know. A military force that fights by healing instead of killing. We haven't eliminated war, Ben replied. But we've changed how wars are fought. When both sides know that medical aid will be available, regardless of who wins, when they know that wounded soldiers will be treated equally, when they understand that civilians will be protected,